Today we're going to be talking about how victimhood becomes an adopted identity. Now let me begin by saying something very clearly. In life, real harm happens. People are assaulted, people are abused, people are injured, betrayed or traumatized. In those moments, someone is a victim of an event. There is no ambiguity in that, and there is no blame. This work does not deny pain, it does not minimize trauma, and it does not suggest that suffering is imagined or deserved. I want to make that very, very clear. Some things happen to us that should never happen, period. But Veritas, which is a part of the V2V method, in fact it's the first step in the victim to victory method, asks very different questions. It doesn't ask you what happened to you, but what happens inside you over time as a result of what happened to you. You see, an event can make us a victim, but becoming a victim as an identity is something that forms later. And that distinction really matters, because for some people victimhood begins with real harm. Yet for others, it begins much earlier, in childhood patterns, of getting attention, reward. And for some people, or a lot of people, it can be a combination of both. Over time, the mind learns how to organize itself around what happened. And sometimes this organization is protective. Sometimes it's understandable. And sometimes, without awareness, it becomes very limiting. When pain is unresolved, the mind can cling to it, not because somebody wants to suffer, but because the story of being wronged, being harmed, or being powerless becomes familiar. In a weird way, it explains life, it explains behavior, explains why things feel hard. And undeniably, in adulthood, it continues to be a tool for getting attention and reward from people, until people get tired of it, of course. Now, one thing we should note that is, in moments of real threat, people respond very differently. There are people who freeze, there are people who comply, and there are some who actually fight back because they're in full control of their own power. No method is wrong, no method is right, because these are actually not conscious choices. They are nervous system responses. And sometimes, even in extreme circumstances, a person may experience a moment of taking back their power, which is a refusal, if you like, to collapse internally. It's a decision not to hand over their sense of self to someone else, even when they have very little control. Now, when that happens, it can be deeply protective, but when it doesn't, we should not think of it as a failure, because everybody responds differently. Over time, however, something subtle can happen. The event takes on an identity of its own that we take on. So, in other words, the event becomes the identity. And the identity then begins to shape our perception, our relationships, our possibilities in life. For some people, as I said before, staying in the victim position feels rather safe. It offers sympathy, it's protection from responsibility. It offers a reason for us not to take risks anymore. And sometimes, even unconsciously, it offers a way to influence others or receive attention. In fact, I would go as far as saying, if we're going to be brutally honest, it's a way of manipulating others. Now, this does not make a person bad, absolutely not. It just makes them human. But it does come with a price. And the price is not the original pain. The price is living as if life is still happening to us, even in the moment when, even at the time when the moment has passed. It feels like we're still receiving life instead of actively engaging in life. Perhaps I should put it like that. But we have to remember that everything in life is impermanent. Everything. including trauma, identity, the stories we tell ourselves in order to survive. Everything is impermanent. Everything is subject to change. Now, there comes a point, which I have to say is different for everyone, where healing is no longer about remembering what happened, but it's about choosing how much power it gets to have in the here and now over us. And this is where Veritas begins, because Veritas does not accept denial. Veritas is not with blame. It's a quiet, brave, or courageous question, whatever you want to use, that asks, is this identity still protecting me? Or is it still keeping me stuck in this cycle of going over and over the same things? Staying in victimhood is not failure, let me please stress this. But remaining there, indefinitely, it is not fate either. At some point, coming out of victimhood has to be a conscious choice. It doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It just means not allowing one moment or several moments in life to become the whole life story. In the next video, we're going to explore why awareness, not force, is the only place real change begins. But for now, what I'd like you to do is just notice not only what happened to you, but what you decided, consciously or unconsciously, about yourself because of it. Noticing is already a step out of unconsciousness and back into choice. Because when you notice something and when you're aware of it, you can choose to make a change. That's where transformation begins.